understand, I'm using this much of the throttle pedal. The 392 Hemi, little excessive. If you want to know what this car started out as, go check out the first video I did on it, introducing the red 1971 Challenger Hemi swap project, or something like that. I've done a few updates as the project has come together, but I'm sure that'll make an interesting contrast. It's not that it was slow with the 360 Magnum, it's just a little extra now. Absolute insanity. Here, just pop it into sixth. It's just too many gears. You can drive it like a sane person if you use just the tip of your toe and that much throttle. Otherwise, it's all party, all the time. Why am I parked on a bunch of red vines? That's interesting. Here we are right back where we started. Don't worry about that. I'm sure he's fine. This thing is just gorgeous. Of course it was before we ever did anything. Now the car is not done. We've still got adjustment issues with the hood here. We gotta get the latch right. We still need the pins. And of course, we need the Hemi badges. We're still running on the out-of-the-box tune, which frankly is quite good, but we are gonna have a professional go over it and make sure it's as good as it can be. And hopefully we get a horsepower number. The wheel's slightly off center. I kind of thought it was, but yeah, the alignment guy behind the camera tends to get those wrong. That's okay. We don't really like the angle this junction block and the steering shaft is sitting at, so I'll be installing a U-joint kit there. I'm really just getting some shakedown miles on the car right now, making sure the fluids stay in the engine, which so far, yeah, they seem to be. I do still have to get the AC lines in. Again, not 100% done, but we're in the home stretch. Man, I could really use a snack. I just remembered the first time I drove this car, it had no gauge cluster. That was entertaining. I might need to come up with something clever to stash back there. I don't like being able to see that insulation and stuff. Of course, normally there would have been a vent box blocking most of that. Again, the car is not 100% finished, but it's mostly together, and most everything works. One thing that doesn't work usually is this fender top turn signal, because aftermarket parts are just the best. I figure that's fine because with the lumpy Challenger Rally hood, you literally cannot see it. The gauges are all working now. The fuel gauge was slightly dead for a bit there. Someone forgot to add a direct ground wire to the fuel tank. Typical. The radio works. Oh yeah. I did get the reverse lights on the car and the dash mounted reverse indicator, standard on all 4-speed cars, to function. So that's great. I had to shut it off to open the trunk and show you my handiwork in here. Now don't mind the unfinished cabling. I still have to clip all that in place and completely replace this ground cable. That's fine. But the battery's mounted in the trunk, right there. Very fancy. That's a special setup just for an Optima. And here, we've got a 200 amp breaker just in case there's ever a short. That would be bad. Underneath the breaker, we have a main power shutoff. So that's good. If it ever tries to be on fire or whatever, you can come back here and throw the switch and hopefully it stops. But the breaker should prevent that sort of thing anyway. If this were a race car with the battery in the trunk, that switch would have to be outside of the car. But in this application, I think it's fine. Yes, you'll have to unlock the trunk to get to it, but I don't think that's undoable. And at least we have some way of shutting the power off quickly if the need ever arises. Also, could be useful for long-term storage. This power run from battery positive to that shutoff is unprotected. So I'm gonna do everything I can to wrap it, clip it, make sure nothing ever happens to that. This is a trunk after all. Things might end up running into it. Here's a quick look at the taillight wiring I did. There's a lot more of it than there ever should have to be because of the LED taillight conversion. Speaking of the LED taillight conversion, it works, but a few of the boards are slightly broken. You can pretty easily see this. It's just a strip of LEDs that don't do anything. But I've only just realized there's one out here too. Nice. These taillights actually have a lifetime guarantee, and that's good news. They've been sitting in boxes for some time. It's not like I abused them installing them. There's no reason those lights should be out. But to get them back out, the valence, the bumper, and that entire trim panel have to come back off. Then the nice wires I just installed and tidied all have to be cut too, so yay! In the first video I did on this car, I kind of went on and on about how pretty it is. I guess I'll spare you. But it's quite pretty. Without the modern 392 Hemi badges on the hood, the only hint that anything is up here is that. And it's very subtle, which I like. Admire the Holley headlights so you can actually see. Admire the fresh blackout job done to this grille. How sweet is that? I do need to do something to hide these components because you can just see them from certain angles. And we can't have that. If you haven't seen any of the other videos on this car, I'll fill you in real quick on what's going on here. 392 Hemi, obviously. T56 6-speed. 4-wheel Willwood disc brakes. Tubular K-frame. Sway bars front and rear. Chassis stiffening kit from US Car Tool. Subframe connectors, of course. We added factory type torque boxes. And it's got heavy duty springs. It currently has an 8 3/4 rear end. I believe it's a 373 gear chunk, but I could be wrong. This is a full 3-inch exhaust kit from TTI, and it's really nice. It had this exhaust kit with the Magnum engine as well. It almost lined up with the new headers, but not quite. So I did have to cut the pipes and install these new front sections. As you can see, they're not fully welded because we kind of ran out of gas in the middle of that project. It's on the list too. As you can see, the car is equipped with this, relatively rare, wide chrome molding along the front edge of the fenders and hood. It's kind of nifty. Gives it a bit of a wraparound bumper look. It also has its factory side molding still, which is an interesting choice. Of course, this car was born as a nothing special 318 car. In fact, it was originally gold. I've heard some complaints from various commenters about modernizing this thing with a 392 Hemi. And I understand. I have my own opinions on that, but I certainly wouldn't say the car has been ruined. No, I think it's pretty far from ruined. It's amazing in just about every single way. Personally, I really like this setup. For one thing, by looking in here, there are no hints that it's not factory. Other than the vintage air controls, and the vents, and the fact that the shift knob says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on it. So often it seems like a modernized car like this will have modern bucket seats and other amenities that just don't belong. We haven't done any of that, and I love it. If you don't know what this car is, you just think it's a nice old Challenger. Obviously, the humongous American racing wheels and sticky tires do somewhat give it away. But I don't think it's gaudy. I do like the style on that wheel, even if it is a little big. Of course, to me, the more important part is, what does the car do? And this one does some stuff. Okay, it still starts funky sometimes, but it's been much improved since I adjusted the fuel pressure. A note to self, the parking brake warning light still doesn't work. That's gonna be a problem. Now, as I mentioned, this car is not 100% done, but it's close. And since I needed to put some road miles on it, I thought I'd bring you along, show you what it's like. Yeah, that's just kind of normal. I do not like this shifter. It's a special setup for the E-body. Instead of coming out of the top of the 6-speed like they normally do, it's actually mounted off the back with a rod that extends out of the case. It's kind of vague. It's hard for me to find gears sometimes. Anyway, what's it like around the corner? Like that. Oh yeah, please pull out right in front of me. Yeah, use the whole road. Last time I drove this car over here, there were also crazy people everywhere. Oh yeah. Yeah, it just doesn't washer fluid doesn't work yet. I'm missing the two little tiny sections of rubber hose. It doesn't have any fluid in it. God, taking off in gravel is really hard in this car. Especially uphill. Too many horse torques. Now again, if it looks like I'm beating on it or using all of the horsepower, I am not. That is like maybe 20-25% throttle. There is so much more in this thing, it's ridiculous. Of course, this is an electric throttle body, so I don't get to choose how far the throttle opens. It does. brakes work well, but there's a good bit of pedal effort involved. We'll go ahead and double check and make sure the fluids are still staying in it. And then we'll go test it some more. Something before using it in the field. No, we will not be drifting Austin's Challenger in the field. A little too nice for that. So far, so good. Reverse light. You ever see a Mopar from this time without that, with a 4-speed? You know it's not original. Oh, I didn't clean the bug guts, dang it! Sometime today, you can do it, now you can do it, and you can do it, and then I can do it, and that'll be great. Oh, should I go for the high score? This road isn't usually super busy, but of course it's like recently took this car to the Sunbust Mopar show in Graham, Washington to show it off. People were excited. Something tells me we're gonna be doing more of these. Of course, it didn't have a hood yet then, so it was really easy to take in all of this. You know, there are a lot of Hemi swapped classic Mopars out there in the world, but I can't say I've ever seen any where the builders took quite the approach I did. I've made every effort here to make this look like an OE setup, to make it blend into the car, to make it look like it belongs there. As much as is feasible of the factory componentry has been retained here. For example, nice restored wiper motor, and the washer setup. The car has an aftermarket electrical system, but it's routed and wrapped in such a way that for the most part, it looks factory. I did cut a big hole in the firewall to pass the engine control wiring through, but I put it inside of a plate, which is sealed to the firewall and shaped to look like it belongs there. Of course, it houses the heater and AC pass-throughs as well. The vintage air system utilizes this electronically controlled heater valve. It's mounted to a bracket too. In fact, that bracket is mounted to these two extra fasteners I had to add by drilling through the firewall to mount the heater box itself. As much of the wiring as was feasible to hide is hidden. I wish I could do something a little different with this, but that's kind of where it has to live. The car received an AN fuel line setup, but it's mounted in little support brackets everywhere possible to keep it neat and safe. This charge wire routing was utilized on some factory Hemi powered vehicles, as were these little clips to keep it in place. I made great use of those clips everywhere possible. Still unfinished, the radiator cover I want to install, and the cold air intake box. I can't finish sketching out the radiator cover until I've finished the cold air box. I can't finish templating the cold air box until the insulation is installed on the underside of the hood. I can't really install the insulation on the underside of the hood until the hood alignment's done. Everything in due time. It's absolutely essential in a build like this that all of the components fit together correctly and go together in the right order. That attention to detail is really what makes this build special. A lot of it's found under the hood here, but really it extends to the whole car. Here's another great example of that. The vintage air box. Behind it is factory insulation. I had to carefully trim that. I also had to trim it for the wiring pass-through I added. Then I had to make a bracket to mount the Terminator computer here. Of course, all of those wires had to be routed very carefully. I had to mount the coil control modules. I had to mount relays, fuses, all sorts of things. Things are very crowded in the fuse box neighborhood. I had to modify this box to fit right. I had to modify this electronic throttle pedal mount to clear the box, and I had to space this out slightly so that connector wouldn't hit that fuse. It got even more crowded once I added the AC ducting. What a pain that is. This reproduction firewall insulation didn't really fit right, so I had to make some modifications there. So much time and thought and planning goes into a build like this. You don't want to just throw in these aftermarket components and hope it all works out. You need to make them work together. I'm not saying I'm a master fabricator or a brilliant engineer. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I've never done a build like this before. But I am really happy with how it's turning out. And that's how I did it. Careful planning. And the proper use of cardboard. This particular build was really a successful collaboration between the owner, Austin, and us at Rocket Restorations. Though we've installed fuel injection systems and aftermarket electrical and that sort of thing, we'd never done a modern Hemi swap before. Of course, if it wasn't already obvious, this build could be done cheaper. The vintage air kit definitely isn't necessary, nor are any of the components that say Willwood on them. To that end, at Rocket Restorations, we're going to put together a rough package for a Hemi swap like this. It'll give you an idea of what you would pay for an engine, a control system, all of the things you need to get the engine up and running in the car. Of course, you could take it a lot further than that too. Maybe you want a 6-speed. Maybe you want air conditioning. All these things are possible. It's just money. So all that info will be coming in future installments. And of course, we'll get a look at the car when it's actually finished. I like it. In the meantime, I want to extend some credit and thanks where it's very much due. First to Austin, the owner of the Red 71 Challenger project. He did all of the legwork and research to figure out what engine, what control system, what electrical system, what clutch, etc. would be required to make all of this work. He bought all the parts and handed them to us in a pile, with the knowledge that we'd never done this before. That requires quite a bit of trust. Through this entire process, if I needed anything, a part, a bit of knowledge that I couldn't find on the internet, he magically made it appear, which is a big help in finishing a build like this. More than that, he never questioned my methods or the little touches I was putting into the build. He kind of just said, do it, man. And I did. I'm very pleased with that. So thank you very much again. Tom Hergert, of course, the guy that writes my paychecks, similarly just handed this project to me and said, here you go, figure it out. He also occasionally lets me point the camera at things I'm doing, and well, that's helpful for all kinds of reasons. That's why it lets me bring you guys along for super fun adventures like this. So for that, and the experience, and the continued paychecks that keep clearing, I am very thankful. While I spearheaded the effort on this car, of course my co-workers Trev and Evan at Rocket were also very helpful in getting it together. Evan did the complete build-out on the front suspension, transferring all of the fancy components over to that new tubular cross member. He helped me in assembling the drivetrain and getting everything together and ready to go in the car. And Trev handled the nice little pretty touches. He aligned the panels. He did some touch-up paint. He made the grill pretty. Little details like that just make it, you know? And that's not exactly in my wheelhouse. Of course, as usual, I have to thank you, the viewer, for being here. Hopefully you like seeing things like this, because I'm going to keep doing it. If you don't, I don't know why you're still here. Is just so angry. No, we're not going to drift it in the field. We're just going to stand back and take it all in. On this channel, my main focus, budget stuff. Factory cars. Yeah, there's some cool shiny things and the occasional Hemi here or there, but for the most part, I like my fun a little cheaper than this. While the price tag on this build was not astronomical, it certainly wasn't a budget deal. If you want this in your life, just be aware you're gonna pay up for it. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You do not need 500 horsepower to have fun with your classic Mopar. I loved building this car. I sure love driving it. That's awesome. But I don't want you, the viewer, to get the idea that you need to do this to yours. That's all I'm saying. This is friggin' sweet. I don't think I'll be building one for myself. At least not anytime soon. But man, could I get used to that. I think that about does it for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you somehow don't know this, I have a website called deaddodgegarage.com. And on that website, I sell merch, like these hats. So do me a favor, run over there and send me some of your hard-earned money, would you? I'd really appreciate that. And remember, a Wasp is considerably faster than a John Deere tractor. True story.